Next, tragedy strikes, accidents happen. Be there when the calls come in. It's back-to-back episodes of Rescue 911. Next on Discovery Health Channel.
This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Today on Rescue 911, a hiking nightmare. Serene snow-capped mountains turn disastrous for two friends.
Here was my friend dying in front of me.
Now rescuers must perform a daring save.
This is the first time we actually had to pull anybody out of there for real.
Rescue 911.
When tragedy strikes and help is far away, minutes can seem like a lifetime. I'm William Shatner. Tonight on Rescue 911, true stories of choices that threaten futures and change lives. We begin on the morning of February 5th, 1992, as members of a mountaineering club set out to scale the ice-covered walls of a canyon just outside Ouray, Colorado. This was the first time these three members of the Los Alamos Mountaineering Club had gone ice climbing together. Jan Studebaker had 12 years climbing experience.
We had decided on several areas that looked like prime candidates for ice climbing. The first and easiest in our mind was Box Canyon.
Chris Brislon, also an experienced climber, was new to the club.
Box Canyon is a spectacular area because it's such a narrow, confined little canyon with all this ice on either side of it. You have to go down into it to climb back out.
Box Canyon has climbs of varying difficulty, varying heights, from 50 or 60 feet to 170 feet.
The third man, John Meyer, was an experienced rock climber, but had only been ice climbing once before.
John has a real go-for-it attitude. Even if he doesn't know how to do something, he's ready to jump in, and his fear factor is low. That's gotten him into a number of problems in the past.
I'm going first, right?
We thought that this might be a good place to do our ice climbing, but we weren't absolutely certain because we couldn't see from the very top to the bottom. So the only way to do it was to throw the rope literally out into the air and let it drape over the hummock of ice and then rappel down.
Look out below!
Typical rope is 165 feet long. So the doubled over rope gives you a little over 80 feet to rappel on. I thought that would get us to the bottom.
All right, you're good. I see you later.
The cliffs go straight down, literally right into the river. Jan went down first.
I rappelled, keeping track of the end of the rope, and I realized it wasn't going to get us down to the bottom.
Chris was watching from the top of the frozen waterfall.
I heard Jan hollering, but of course I couldn't see him. I couldn't see down into the gorge that close to the base of the cliff.
I had on my crampons and I had my ice tools nearby, and so I got off the rope and I down climbed to the ground.
The rope's too short!
I started pulling up one end of the rope and feeding line down the other end until it would reach the bottom. Finally, he said, yes, it reaches the bottom now. So we now had one long strand going all the way down to the river to rappel on. So I grabbed what I thought was the short end of the rope and pulled it up and piled it in the snow right at the top of the cliff.
I was sorting my gear, not paying a whole lot of attention to what was happening.
John! Hey, stop!
when we continue.
John was gurgling, and I knew his lungs were in bad trouble, and I was very concerned. I remember thinking that here was my friend dying in front of me.
Next on Discovery Health Channel. 911. It's the call that saves lives. True stories that one day could help you in an emergency. Rescue 911, coming up next, only on Discovery Health Channel.
Friday, 2 bodies, and only 1 witness holds the answer. Dr. G, medical examiner. Friday at 9 on Discovery Health Channel.
When 50-year-old John Myers slipped off the end of a rope while ice climbing and fell 50 feet down the face of a frozen waterfall, another climber, Chris Brislon, ran to call for help. Craig O'Connell, an off-duty paramedic, happened to be climbing nearby.
I knew he had fallen quite a ways. I'm thinking along the lines of, is he still alive?
Slow down, you can hurt him worse.
I got to the victim and assessed him real quick. He seemed unresponsive.
John was gurgling, and I knew his lungs were in bad trouble. He was not breathing correctly, and I was very concerned. I remember thinking at that moment that here was my friend dying in front of me.
The Ouray Mountain Volunteer Rescue Team was dispatched to Box Canyon. Among those who responded was Bill Whitt.
We always train constantly on the ice. We're always out climbing. But this is the first time we actually had to pull anybody out of there for real.
I wasn't hearing any noise, any sounds from him. Went ahead and did a jaw thrust and opened his airway. As soon as I manipulated his airway, he started breathing on his own. He was a little bit combative at first, which made me think more about a head injury.
Settle down. Settle down. John.
Underneath his right armpit, he had some subcutaneous air, little air bubbles in the skin, which let me know that he had punctured a lung.
Almost an hour after John fell 50 feet to the bottom of the canyon, the first rescue workers arrived on the scene, including EMT Bill Dwelly.
Bill, who's the paramedic I heard about?
Right here.
The victim at that time was still pretty wild looking. He was feeling a lot more pain to breathe. And the more consciousness he regained, the more pain he started feeling. All right, let's get one arm. Let's get his good arm out here where I can work on it, all right?
The only way they could get John out of the narrow canyon was to hoist him back up the frozen waterfall.
Nobody on our team gets hurt trying to save someone else, because it doesn't do anybody any good if now we've got 2 people to rescue. So we always take our time, we think far in advance what we want to do, and everything is completely bomb-proof so no one else gets hurt.
EMT Randy Gerke was carefully lowered down on a pulley system with the Stokes basket.
When I started from the top and realized where the climber had fallen from, it was surprising to me that he was doing as well as he was doing. We knew that there was decreased breath sounds on one side, which can be fatal very quickly. Whenever they breathe in, the air escapes from their lungs and goes inside of their chest cavity and begins to collapse the lung.
All right, we almost got you out of here. Just hang in there. Keep breathing.
Usually, we put the litter in a horizontal position, and then we put 2 people to tend the litter on the way up. In this case, we wanted to save weight and gain speed. As we were coming up, it was very difficult because of the climbers that were doing the counterweight. They would knock ice and snow debris from the top, and some of the ice chunks were probably, 4 or 5 pounds.
It's a real fine line having too many guys on the rope and having them go way too fast or not enough and having to pull. So we were constantly playing with the system.
Every part of that rescue was dangerous. I think we worked as a team better because we knew that John had a chance, but he only had a chance if we spent as little time as we could to get him out. This particular time of the year, there was a lot of ice buildup. It made it very, very difficult to stabilize the litter on top of the pipe.
From the trestle, it's a 200-foot vertical drop into the bottom of the canyon. So when we rig something up, we want to make sure it's safe enough that everybody can be on it, and there's plenty of strength left over.
You're almost there. 50 yards, bud.
The accident had only occurred a few hundred yards from the road, and it took 5 hours to get him back to the road. It really brings home how serious an accident up in the high mountains is.
50-year-old John Meyer was treated for hypothermia, a collapsed lung, and 6 broken ribs, and released after a week in the hospital.
I think it's an absolute miracle that he's not dead. Most people, if they fell that distance, would be dead today. And without all those things coming together and people taking care of him immediately on the bottom, I think, you know, it could have been a different story.
I was really impressed by the communication between the members of the rescue team, asking for confirmation. What do you think of this anchor? How does this look? All the things, of course, that we hadn't been doing when we set up the rappel.
It's been a year since John's fall.
The basic lesson that I really learned is that you make mistakes. I think all 3 of the people that were involved in the accident, all of us made mistakes. And if any of us had not done one of those things, there would have been nothing to happen.
John has no plans to ice climb again.
My advice to anyone is to find the right training. Because if you go out with a little bit of knowledge, then you can very easily get yourself into big trouble. And if you go out with no equipment because you can't afford it, chances are we're coming to get you.
I don't know how you thank the people that did the rescue. There's no way of really expressing the gratitude I feel to it. I mean, I'm very profoundly grateful to them for what they did.
Don't look at me! We all should take first aid and CPR courses every year. By learning basic life-saving techniques, we might be able to save the life of someone we love. This series is dedicated to all the men and women who answer our calls for help and are there when we need them most. I'm William Shatner. Join us again next week for more true stories on Rescue 911.
Next, step inside the command center where the calls for help are answered and meet the real-life heroes who save lives. Stay tuned for another episode of Rescue 911, next on Discovery Health Channel. Real life, medicine, miracles.
Mr. Shapiro, step out of the car, please.